More fallout as senior US generals testify before Congress about the evacuation out of Afghanistan. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, has conceded that the US lost the 20-year war.
It is clear, it is obvious to all of us that the war in Afghanistan did not end on the terms that we wanted, with the Taliban now in power in Kabul.
The generals were once again candid in their assessment of the conflict, calling the war's end a strategic failure. Simon Marks joins us live now from Washington, D.C. for more on this. Simon, the generals saying that it was a series of events that led to this chaotic and hasty end to America's longest war.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of nuance in the testimony, including the fact that the generals, multiple generals who testified, not just Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, but Frank McKenzie, the head of CENTCOM, US Central Command in Doha, and also, of course, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, all essentially said there were decades of blame to go around. General McKenzie particularly identifying the agreement that the Trump administration signed with the Taliban in Doha as having put the United States on the trajectory that ultimately led to the botched US military withdrawal under President Biden's aegis. But all of these generals saying that you had to look at the 20-year American involvement in Afghanistan in totality, and saying that successive presidents, all the way back to President George W. Bush, who first sent troops into Afghanistan, bore some responsibility for the fact that, as we heard there, at least General Milley had concluded that the outcome of all of this was evidently not what the United States had anticipated or hoped for. But it was certainly jarring to hear some of those cadences, particularly from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying publicly what some in the Biden administration have failed publicly to acknowledge, namely that the withdrawal operation clearly did not go the way in which the Biden White House had planned for it to go, and clearly led to the rapid return of the Taliban to power in a way that the administration had not foreseen.
Well, President Biden has long made clear his position and support of that pullout, Simon. But how will this hearing now affect Joe Biden's relationship with his top defense officials?
Look, I think there's no question that there's going to be strains in some of these relationships, and the strains between some of these commanders has been evident over the last couple of days here in Washington, D.C. Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, much less likely than the two generals flanking him to be plain-spoken about the difficulties that the U.S. military encountered in that withdrawal operation and about the sort of the blame game. It was evident that at times the defense secretary was very uncomfortable about some of the questions that he was being asked, mostly by Republicans, but some by members of the Democratic Party as well. It is being observed here by many foreign policy analysts that no one has yet resigned or been fired over not just the Afghan withdrawal, but then also the disastrous drone strike that killed 10 civilians, including at least 6 children, in what the US military said was an effort to target a suicide bomber, except they targeted the wrong person. So there are still calls here on a daily basis for some kind of consequences for some of those people who were directly involved in planning the Afghan withdrawal.
Simon, thank you very much for that. Simon Marks there in Washington, D.C.